My name is Elena Cross. I am 36 years old. And I live in Manhattan, New York. For the last 7 years, I have stood beside my husband at charity galas while strangers congratulated him for a generosity that was never truly his. The night everything ended, 600 donors filled the Grand Meridian Hotel beneath crystal chandeliers, television cameras, and banners carrying the name of our foundation. Marcus stood on stage, accepting applause for another record-breaking year. Sabrina Colle, our communications director, stood beside him, wearing my dead mother's diamond necklace. 15 minutes later, my husband had his hand locked around my arm and was dragging me across the ballroom while hundreds of phones recorded every step. "Throw her out," he ordered hotel security. I did not scream. I did not beg. At the ballroom doors, I took out my phone and sent my father 3 words: "Stop the gala." The orchestra went silent before Marcus could take another breath. Every screen turned black. The doors locked. Then my father walked into the room. And every senior executive in the hotel stood up to understand why that moment mattered. You need to understand the lie. Marcus had been living inside for years. He believed the Grand Meridian gave him its ballroom for free because he was important. He loved telling people the hotel needed his foundation more than his foundation needed the hotel. He repeated that story at dinners, board meetings, television interviews, and private parties. According to Marcus, hotel executives competed for the privilege of hosting him because his name attracted wealthy donors, politicians, celebrities, and corporate sponsors. He never once asked why the general manager personally answered my calls. He never wondered why our annual gala always received the presidential ballroom, the top floor suites, and a security team normally reserved for heads of state. Marcus thought the answer was his charm. The truth was simpler. The Grand Meridian belonged to Vailcrest Hotels International. The company my father, Adrian Valle, had founded 38 years earlier, with one aging seaside property and a loan no bank manager believed he could repay. Vailcrest now owned 73 luxury hotels across North America and Europe. The Grand Meridian was one of its crown jewels. My father remained chairman and controlling shareholder. I was his only child and the legal heir to the company. I also owned 12% of Vailcrest in my own name through a trust created by my mother before she died. Marcus knew none of that. When I met him, I introduced myself as Elena Bennett, using my mother's maiden name. I was 27 and working for a nonprofit that restored libraries in low-income neighborhoods. I dressed simply, drove an old sedan, and lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. My father disagreed with my decision to hide my connection to Vailcrest, but he understood why I did it. I had spent my entire youth meeting people who became warmer the instant they heard my surname. Men who had barely noticed me suddenly remembered my favorite flowers after discovering who my father was. Friends who had never invited me anywhere began proposing vacations, investments, and partnerships. I wanted one relationship in my life that had nothing to do with hotel suites, private aircraft, or family money. Marcus appeared to be that relationship. He was energetic, persuasive, and obsessed with the idea of building a charity that would fund emergency housing for women and children escaping domestic violence. He told me his mother had once spent a night sleeping in a bus station with him after fleeing an abusive boyfriend. The story moved me deeply. I believed his ambition came from pain transformed into purpose. I helped him write the first grant application. I designed our initial donor database. I introduced him to social workers, shelter directors, and community leaders. I stayed awake beside him through countless nights while we planned what became the Bright Harbor Foundation. Our first fundraiser raised only $48,000. But every cent went exactly where we promised. We funded hotel rooms for 17 families, paid emergency transportation for 6 women, and provided legal retainers for 3 mothers fighting for protective orders. Marcus cried when we read the thank you letters. I cried with him. Back then, his gratitude seemed real. The foundation grew quickly. Marcus was a natural speaker. He could walk into a room full of skeptical executives and make them believe they had a moral obligation to open their wallets. He remembered names, spouses, birthdays, and private insecurities. Donors felt seen around him. Reporters loved him. Corporate sponsors trusted him. Within 4 years, Bright Harbor was raising more than $12 million annually. Success changed the temperature of our marriage before it changed anything else. Marcus began speaking about the foundation as if he had built it alone. In interviews, I became my wife, who helps with operations. At board meetings, he interrupted me and repeated my ideas in his own words. He hired people without consulting me, approved larger budgets, and insisted we needed a lifestyle that reflected the caliber of donors we were courting. Tailored suits replaced the jackets I once ironed for him in our apartment. A leased sports car replaced the used sedan he had driven when we met. He began spending more nights at events, more weekends on donor retreats, and more mornings taking calls in rooms where I was not welcome. Sabrina Cole arrived during our 5th year of marriage. She was 31, polished, and frighteningly skilled at converting scandal into publicity. She had worked in luxury branding before joining Bright Harbor as communications director. From her first week, she treated Marcus as though he were a global statesman instead of the executive director of a regional charity. She reorganized his schedule, redesigned his public image, and convinced him to hire a personal stylist with foundation money. Within 3 months, she was traveling with him everywhere. I noticed the small things first. Sabrina always knew which tie Marcus planned to wear before I did. She answered questions directed at him. She placed her hand on his back when guiding him toward cameras. She called him late at night about matters that could easily have waited until morning. When I raised concerns, Marcus laughed and accused me of being threatened by a competent woman. You wanted the foundation to grow, he told me. Growth requires professionals. Sabrina understands visibility. You understand spreadsheets. Both matter. The insult was carefully disguised as reassurance. He wanted me behind the scenes while he and Sabrina became the public face of everything I had helped build. I might have confronted the affair sooner if the affair had been the only problem. But 6 months before the gala, I discovered something far more dangerous. Bright Harbor's annual report showed that program expenses had increased, yet several partner shelters told me they had received less money than the previous year. One director called me privately and said a promised grant of $200,000 had never arrived. Another said Bright Harbor had delayed reimbursement for emergency hotel placements while continuing to advertise those same families in fundraising campaigns. I began reviewing our books after midnight. Using copies of statements, Marcus believed I no longer had authority to access. At first, the discrepancies looked like sloppy accounting. Then I found recurring payments to a consulting company called Northstar Image Strategies. The invoices described donor engagement, campaign architecture, executive positioning, and brand protection. The language was vague enough to hide almost anything. Over 18 months, Bright Harbor had paid Northstar more than $4 million. Northstar had no public office, no employees listed online, and no meaningful client history. Its registration address belonged to a mailbox store. The authorized signatory was a holding company registered in Delaware. I traced that holding company through 3 layers until I found a name connected to a luxury apartment lease in Manhattan. Sabrina Cole. I did not confront Marcus. Not yet. My father had taught me one rule about fraud before I was old enough to understand the word never interrupt someone while they are building the evidence against themselves. So I stayed quiet. I smiled through dinners. I attended events. I copied invoices, downloaded bank records, and preserved email headers. I asked innocent questions and watched Marcus lie with increasing confidence. Then, 3 weeks before the gala, my mother's necklace disappeared. It was not merely jewelry. My father had given it to my mother on their 20th anniversary, a line of old-cut diamonds surrounding a single blue stone at the center, chosen because it matched her eyes. She wore it only 4 times. After she died, my father placed it in a velvet box and told me it belonged to me. Not because of its value, but because my mother had wanted me to wear it on a night when I finally understood my own strength. I kept it in a private safe inside the Vailcrest family suite at the Grand Meridian. Only 3 people had access to that room: my father, the hotel's general manager, and me. Marcus knew the necklace existed, but he believed it was costume jewelry my mother had left behind. He had seen the box once when we were preparing for a gala and joked that the design looked old-fashioned. When the necklace vanished, the hotel's internal security team quietly reviewed access logs. My key had opened the suite 2 days earlier. I had been at a board meeting across town at that exact time. Someone had used the duplicate access card Marcus had taken from my desk months earlier, a card I had assumed was lost. The cameras told the rest of the story. Marcus entered the suite wearing a baseball cap and carrying an empty garment bag. He stayed 12 minutes. He left with the velvet box hidden inside the bag. My father wanted to confront him immediately. "No," I said. "Let him believe we know nothing." "Elena, he stole from your mother." "I know. And you still want to wait. I want to know why." The answer appeared at the gala. The Bright Harbor Winter Charity Gala was our largest event of the year. 600 guests had purchased tables ranging from $25,000 to $200,000. The ballroom had been transformed into a silver and white landscape of mirrored stages, floating candles, and towering arrangements of winter roses. A 12-piece orchestra played beneath a ceiling painted with clouds. 3 national news programs had sent camera crews. A famous actress was scheduled to speak about surviving an abusive marriage. The mayor would present Marcus with a Humanitarian Leadership Award. Every detail had been chosen to communicate one message: Marcus Cross was a man of compassion, influence, and integrity. I arrived 2 hours before the doors opened. I wore a midnight blue gown my mother had selected years earlier, but never had the chance to see me wear. I did not wear much jewelry. A pair of diamond studs and my wedding ring were enough. I had spent the afternoon reviewing the final evidence packet with Maya Chen, Bright Harbor's former controller, who had resigned after Marcus ordered her to classify personal travel as donor development. Maya had agreed to cooperate with federal investigators and the state attorney general. The gala was not merely a fundraiser anymore. It was the final scene of an investigation Marcus did not know existed. The authorities had asked me not to provoke him. They wanted the event to proceed long enough to document several promised donations and capture communications between Marcus, Sabrina, and North Star. I agreed. I had survived months of silence. I could survive one more evening. The Grand Meridian's general manager, Daniel Reeves, met me near the service corridor. Daniel was 58, immaculate, and loyal to my father with the steadiness of a man who had spent 3 decades protecting the company's reputation. "Mrs. Cross," he said quietly, though he had known me as Elena Vale since I was a child. "Your father is in the executive suite. Security is prepared. The ballroom systems can be controlled from the command room. No one will move without your approval. Marcus must not know." I said, "He believes tonight's accommodations are a personal favor from me. Let him keep believing that." Daniel's gaze softened. I saw the necklace footage. I looked toward the ballroom doors. So did I. "If you need us before the scheduled intervention, I will send one message." Daniel nodded. "Understood." Marcus found me 10 minutes later near the registration tables. He looked flawless in a black tuxedo with satin lapels. Sabrina had chosen it. I knew because a copy of the invoice had been charged to Bright Harbor under Executive Outreach Wardrobe. "You're late," he said. Though I was early. "I have been here for almost an hour. You should have checked in with Sabrina. She has been cleaning up problems all afternoon." "What problems?" "Problems you wouldn't understand from looking at reports." He glanced over my dress. Not with admiration, but evaluation. "At least you look appropriate." There had been a time when a sentence like that would have hurt me. That night it only confirmed how completely he had mistaken my restraint for dependence. "Where is Sabrina?" I asked. "Working." "Of course." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Do not start tonight. Elena, this gala is bigger than either of us. Sponsors are nervous. The press is everywhere. I need you calm, pleasant, and invisible, unless someone specifically asks to speak with you." He said it without embarrassment. Calm, pleasant, and invisible. The woman who had created the first donor list, written the foundation's original mission, and personally negotiated, the hotel partnership was now expected to stand in a corner like hired decoration. "I understand," I said. Marcus relaxed, satisfied by what he believed was surrender. He kissed the air beside my cheek and walked away toward the stage. Guests began arriving at 7. I greeted shelter directors, donors, city officials, and volunteers. Many of them thanked Marcus within earshot for programs I had designed. I smiled and said nothing. Every few minutes, my phone vibrated with encrypted updates from Maya and the investigators. Northstar had submitted a final invoice that afternoon for $380,000. The invoice claimed to cover strategic crisis planning for the gala. The payment had already been approved by Marcus. At 7:45, Sabrina entered the ballroom. Conversation shifted around her. She wore a fitted silver gown with a low neckline, designed to reflect the ballroom lights. Her dark hair was swept back. She walked slowly. Enjoying the attention, Marcus saw her from across the room and stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. Then I saw the necklace. My mother's diamonds rested against Sabrina's throat. The blue center stone lay exactly where I remembered it, resting above my mother's heart. For a second, the noise of the ballroom disappeared. I saw my mother laughing in our garden. I saw her fastening the necklace before my parents' anniversary dinner. I saw her lying in a hospital bed years later, holding my hand and telling me never to let anyone make me smaller so they could feel powerful. Sabrina touched the necklace as she crossed the room. Not accidentally. She lifted her fingers to the diamonds whenever someone looked at her, inviting questions. A donor near me whispered, "That piece must be worth a fortune." "It is," I said. Sabrina reached Marcus. He placed his hand at the small of her back with the ease of a gesture practiced in private. She leaned toward him and murmured something. He smiled. Not the public smile he gave cameras. The intimate one I had not seen directed at me in years. I walked toward them. The orchestra was still playing. Waiters moved between tables. Cameras were focused on the stage. Yet people sensed the change before I said a word. Conversation softened as I approached. "Sabrina," I said. She turned, still smiling. "Elena, you look lovely. Very classic." Her tone made classic sound like obsolete. "Take off the necklace." Marcus's smile disappeared. Sabrina's hand rose to the blue stone. "Excuse me, that necklace belonged to my mother. It was taken from a private safe. Remove it and give it to me." Several nearby guests stopped pretending not to listen. Sabrina looked at Marcus, then back at me. Her smile widened. Marcus gave it to me. The words landed exactly as she intended. She wanted witnesses. She wanted me humiliated publicly. She wanted everyone to understand that my husband had transferred not only his affection but something sacred from my family to her. I looked at Marcus. "Did you take my mother's necklace from the hotel safe?" He lowered his voice. This is not the time. Did you give it to Sabrina Elena? Control yourself. Sabrina tilted her head. He said it was sitting in a box because you never wore it. He wanted someone to appreciate it. A few guests inhaled sharply. Someone behind me began recording. I kept my voice even. It was stolen. Take it off. Sabrina laughed softly. You cannot call a gift stolen simply because you are jealous. I am not jealous of a woman wearing evidence. Marcus stepped between us. Enough. No. I said. Not tonight. His eyes hardened. He was not afraid of the accusation. He was afraid of losing control of the room. You are embarrassing the foundation. He whispered. The foundation has survived worse than an honest sentence. Walk away. Give me the necklace. Sabrina folded her arms, placing one hand protectively over the diamonds. It belongs to me now. I reached toward the clasp, not toward her throat. Not violently. Simply intending to prevent her from walking away with my property. Marcus caught my wrist. His fingers closed so tightly that pain shot up my arm. He twisted my hand away and stepped closer until his face was inches from mine. You will not touch her, he said. The nearby guests had formed a silent circle. More phones were raised. The orchestra continued playing because no one had yet instructed it to stop, creating a grotesque elegance around the confrontation. Let go of me, I said. Marcus tightened his grip. You came here looking for a scene. I came here to protect a charity you have been stealing from. That sentence changed him. For one fraction of a second, fear flashed behind his eyes, then rage covered it. He seized my upper arm with his other hand and pulled me away from Sabrina. The movement was so sudden that my heel slipped against the polished floor. Marcus, I said, loud enough for the cameras now turning toward us. Remove your hand. You have had too much to drink, he announced, projecting his voice for the guests. You are confused and behaving irrationally. I had not consumed a single drink. He began dragging me across the ballroom. The crowd opened in front of us. 600 people watched my husband pull me past tables, decorated in our foundation's name. My arm burned under his grip. The train of my gown caught beneath my shoes. One of the cameras followed us. Sabrina walked several steps behind, still wearing my mother's necklace. Her expression composed but triumphant. Marcus, stop. A board member said weakly, she is disrupting the gala. He replied. Security. 2 hotel guards approached. But they did not touch me. They had been briefed by Daniel. Their job was to remain close, without revealing who truly held authority. Marcus pointed toward the ballroom doors. Throw her out. The command echoed through the room. I saw donors looking down. Others filmed openly. A few whispered that I must be unstable. Marcus had spent years building a version of me that made this moment believable. The quiet wife. The jealous wife. The administrative wife who could not handle his success. Sabrina smiled. I did not resist. That was the part none of them understood. I allowed Marcus to pull me toward the doors because every step gave the cameras a clearer view. Every second preserved his behavior. Every word became evidence. When we reached the final row of tables, Marcus leaned close to my ear. You are finished, he said. By morning, you will be removed from the foundation and from my life. I looked at the diamonds around Sabrina's neck. By morning, you may not have either. He dragged me the last few feet to the entrance. One guard opened the ballroom door. Cold light from the corridor cut across the carpet. Marcus released my wrist with a shove. Get out. I steadied myself, reached into my clutch, and took out my phone. He laughed. Calling a lawyer. No. I opened the secure message thread that contained only one contact. Dad. Stop the gala. I pressed send. The response came before the message status changed from delivered to read. The orchestra stopped in the middle of a note. Not faded. Not paused politely. Every instrument fell silent at once, leaving the ballroom suspended in an unnatural stillness. The giant screens behind the stage went black. The decorative lighting shifted from warm gold to clean white. Along the walls, the discrete green indicators above every exit changed to red. Heavy magnetic locks engaged with a series of precise clicks. Guests turned toward the doors. A nervous ripple moved across the ballroom. Marcus stared at the nearest locked exit, then at the hotel guards. "What are you doing?" Neither guard answered him. Sabrina's smile disappeared. "Marcus," he stepped toward the senior guard. "Open those doors immediately. This is my event." The guard remained still. "Please return to the ballroom." "Sir." "Do you know who I am?" "Yes." "Sir." "Then open the doors." "I cannot do that." Marcus glanced around as if searching for someone he could intimidate. "Get Daniel Reeves." "Now." The lights above the ballroom entrance brightened. At the far end of the corridor, the private elevator opened. Daniel Reeves stepped out first. He was followed by the hotel's director of security, 2 members of Vailcrest's legal team, and my father. Adrian Vale did not look dramatic. He did not need to. He wore a dark suit without a tie and walked with the calm of a man accustomed to entering rooms that changed around him. The hotel staff lining the corridor straightened. Inside the ballroom, executives who recognized him rose from their chairs one after another. The chairman of a multinational bank stood first, then the mayor, then the chief executive of the insurance company sponsoring the gala. A wave of recognition passed across the room until nearly every corporate leader was on their feet. Marcus watched them stand without understanding why. Sabrina did understand. I saw it happen in stages. Her gaze moved from my father to Daniel, from Daniel to me, and then to the necklace resting against her skin. The color drained from her face. My father stopped beside me. His eyes went first to the red marks forming around my wrist and upper arm. The expression on his face did not change. But Daniel took one step back, as though giving anger more space. "Did he hurt you?" my father asked. "I am all right." That was not my question. He dragged me across the ballroom. My father looked at Marcus. Marcus recovered just enough arrogance to speak. "Whoever you are, this is a private foundation event. Your hotel staff has unlawfully detained 600 guests. Open the doors before I call the police." My father turned to Daniel. "Has law enforcement been notified?" "Yes." "Mr. Val, the Financial Crimes Unit and the State Attorney General's representatives are in the building. They requested that the room remain secure while digital evidence is preserved." A murmur swept through the guests. Marcus blinked. "Mr. Vale," my father faced him fully. "Adrian Vale." Recognition finally arrived. Marcus had seen my father in magazines and annual business rankings, but never in person. He looked from Adrian to me, searching for an explanation that would protect the world he believed he controlled. "You know Elena?" he asked. My father's voice was quiet. "She is my daughter." Silence struck the room harder than the orchestra had. Marcus actually laughed once. A small involuntary sound. "No. Elena's father is retired. Her family is from her mother's family, used the Bennett name." My father said, "My daughter chose it because she wanted a private life. That privacy did not give you permission to abuse her." I watched Marcus rebuild the past in his mind. The hotel suites, the waived fees, the direct calls from Daniel, the impossible reservations, the donors who accepted our invitations faster than they accepted his. Every advantage he had credited to his own influence had come through the woman he called invisible. Sabrina lifted a hand toward the clasp at the back of her neck. "Do not remove it," Daniel said. She froze. Daniel addressed the room. The necklace Ms. Cole is wearing is the property of Elena Vale Cross. It was taken from a private safe in this hotel. The theft was recorded on multiple security cameras. Marcus's head snapped toward Sabrina. You said she never used it. She stared at him. You gave it to me. I did not say you could wear it tonight. The exchange was so revealing that several guests lowered their phones only to look at each other in disbelief. My father stepped toward Marcus. You entered my family's private suite using an unauthorized key. You opened a safe. You removed a necklace belonging to my late wife. Then you placed it on your mistress and dragged my daughter from a ballroom in a hotel she owns. Marcus straightened. Elena does not own this hotel. Daniel gestured toward the main stage. The center screen came back to life. A corporate ownership chart appeared beneath the Valecrest logo. Valecrest Hotels International owns the Grand Meridian. Daniel said, Mr. Vale controls 54% of Valecrest voting shares. Elena Vale Cross owns 12% directly and is the sole beneficiary of the family trust, controlling an additional 15% Hayes, an additional 15%. Under the company's succession and operating agreements, she serves as beneficial controlling owner of this property. Numbers replaced rumor. The screen showed Elena Vale Cross in clean white letters above a network of trusts and corporate entities. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Marcus looked at me as though I had changed shape. You lied to me. I protected my identity. You let me believe you were ordinary. I am ordinary. The money never changed what I asked from you. You watched me build this foundation while hiding billions. I helped you build the foundation. What I hid was a surname. His face tightened. This is a setup. You are humiliating me because you are jealous of Sabrina. The accusation was almost comforting in its predictability. When facts became dangerous, Marcus always tried to replace them with emotion. I walked back into the ballroom. The guests parted for me now. Not because Marcus was pulling me, but because the truth had altered the room. My father and Daniel followed. Marcus and Sabrina were escorted several steps behind. I stopped beneath the main screen. No one is being held because of an affair. I said, the doors were secured because Bright Harbor Foundation funds have been diverted through a company controlled by Sabrina Cole. The affair explains their motive. The financial records explain the investigation. Sabrina's voice cracked. That is a lie. Then you will have no objection to the records being displayed. Marcus moved toward the control booth. 2 security officers blocked him. You cannot show private financial information to a ballroom full of people. He said, these are donors. I replied, they deserve to know how their money was used. Howard Ellison, the foundation's board chair, stood from the front table. He was a retired judge and had spent the evening preparing to give Marcus the Humanitarian Leadership Award. Elena, he said slowly. Are you alleging misappropriation of charitable funds? I am presenting documented evidence of it. Howard looked at Marcus. Did you know about payments to North Star Image Strategies? Marcus's answer came too quickly. It is a legitimate vendor. Who owns it? I do not manage every corporate filing. I touched the presentation remote Daniel handed me. The screen changed. A Delaware corporate registration appeared beside Sabrina's photograph. Beneath it was a chain of ownership connecting North Star to a private holding company for which she was the sole member. The guests stopped whispering. Sabrina looked at Marcus with naked panic. He did not look back. This proves nothing, she said. I disclosed my interest. To whom Howard asked. The executive committee. I chair the executive committee. He said, you disclosed nothing to me. Marcus stepped forward. North Star was created because Bright Harbor needed specialized crisis communication. We obtained competitive value. Competitive, I changed the slide. North Star billed $480,000 for a donor campaign designed by Bright Harbor employees. It billed $210,000 for press monitoring, performed through a software subscription, costing $11,000. It billed $380,000 this afternoon for crisis planning related to tonight's gala. A new slide showed the invoice beside an email from Sabrina to Marcus approved before the board sees it. We can clean the supporting documents next week. Someone near the back said, "May God." Marcus stared at the email. That is taken out of context. Then provide the context. He opened his mouth and found none. I advanced the presentation again. Over 18 months. Bright Harbor transferred $4 million to North Star. From North Star, the money moved into personal expenses. The first expense appeared on the screen, a luxury apartment lease at $28,000 per month. Sabrina's address. The next slide showed renovation invoices for marble flooring, custom closets, and a temperature-controlled wine wall. The next showed payments for jewelry. The next showed business-class flights for Marcus and Sabrina, booked under false donor development itineraries. The next showed hotel stays in Paris, Saint Bart's, Vancouver, and Milan. The ballroom lights seemed harsher with every image. A shelter director named Rosa Alvarez rose from table 19. She had run Haven House for 22 years and had begged Bright Harbor for emergency funds after a pipe burst during winter. "You told me our grant was delayed because donations were down," she said to Marcus. 23 women slept on cots in a church basement while you paid for an apartment. Marcus turned toward her. "Rosa, these records are being manipulated. Did you deny our grant? The program team made difficult decisions." "I am the program team," I said. "You overrode the approved payment." Rosa looked at the screen showing a wire transfer dated the same week her grant had been denied. $200,000 had moved from Bright Harbor to North Star. 3 days later, North Star paid the deposit on Sabrina's apartment. The actress scheduled to praise Marcus removed the award envelope from the podium and placed it face down. The mayor sat slowly. Howard Ellison walked toward the stage. As board chair, "I am calling an emergency session." Marcus pointed at him. "You have no quorum." 6 board members stood from separate tables. Howard looked around. "We don't know." Marcus climbed onto the stage before anyone could stop him. He reached for the microphone, but Daniel muted it from the control room. Marcus struck the side of the podium with his palm and shouted without amplification. "This is a private marital dispute disguised as an investigation. Elena discovered an affair and used her father's influence to manufacture a financial scandal." The room remained quiet enough for his voice to carry. He pointed at me. "She has been absent from daily operations for more than a year. She does not know what it takes to run a foundation at this level. Sabrina and I made executive decisions because donors expect excellence. Yes. We traveled. Yes. We maintained an apartment for communications work. Yes. We invested in presentation. That is not theft. That is the price of visibility." I let him finish. He had always been most dangerous when he believed a speech could outrun evidence. "Was the necklace also a communications expense?" I asked. A few guests laughed despite themselves. Marcus's jaw flexed. "The necklace is personal. It was stolen from a hotel safe. You gave me access to the suite. I did not give you access to the safe. You are my wife. Marital property. My mother's necklace was held in a separate family trust and cataloged under the hotel's private vault protocol. You signed an acknowledgement when you accepted a temporary guest credential. The footage shows you entering under a false pretext and concealing the box in a garment bag." Daniel brought up the security recording. The screen displayed a date and timestamp. Marcus appeared in the corridor wearing a cap pulled low. He looked both ways before using the duplicate card. A second camera inside the suite showed him moving directly to the wall panel behind a painting. He entered a code. Failed. Tried again. And then used a photograph on his phone to copy the sequence from a maintenance document he had stolen from my desk. The ballroom watched him open the safe. He removed the velvet box, lifted the necklace, and smiled. Sabrina stared at the recording as if seeing him for the first time. "You told me Elena gave it to you." Marcus turned on her. "Not now. You said it was part of the divorce settlement. We are not discussing this here. You said she knew about us." The room shifted again. Until that moment, Sabrina had remained aligned with him. Fear was beginning to loosen that alliance. Marcus stepped down from the stage and seized her elbow. "Stop talking." She pulled away. "Do not touch me." The irony was so sharp that several guests reacted audibly. I advanced the security footage. A second clip showed Marcus leaving the suite. A third showed him meeting Sabrina in the hotel garage that evening. He opened the velvet box inside her car. She kissed him before taking it. "There is no ambiguity," Daniel said. "The original recordings have been preserved under chain of custody procedures." Marcus looked toward the exits again. "You cannot hold us here." A woman near the rear doors stepped forward and displayed her credentials. "No one is under arrest at this moment. Mr. Cross." The hotel is preserving a controlled scene at the request of the State Attorney General's Charitable Enforcement Bureau. Guests who are not witnesses will be released in an orderly manner after identification and contact information are confirmed. She introduced herself as Deputy Attorney General Tessa Grant. Marcus's confidence faltered. He had expected private hotel security. Perhaps my father's lawyers. He had not expected a government investigator already inside the room. Tessa looked at Sabrina. "Ms. Cole, please do not remove, transfer, or damage the necklace. It may be evidence of theft and unlawful use of charitable assets, depending on how its related expenses were classified." Sabrina's hand fell away from the clasp. Howard called the board members to the front. The 6 directors gathered beside the stage, while Vailcrest staff placed a long conference table beneath the screens. The transition was surreal. Minutes earlier, the ballroom had been a celebration of Marcus's image. Now it had become an emergency hearing conducted in front of the people whose trust he had exploited. Howard spoke into a newly activated microphone. Under Section 9 of the Bright Harbor Bylaws, the board may suspend an executive officer upon credible evidence of fraud, self-dealing, or conduct creating immediate danger to the foundation. "We will consider motions now." Marcus laughed bitterly. "You are staging a show." "No," Howard replied. "You staged the show. We are reviewing the receipts." The first motion suspended Marcus as executive director. The second suspended Sabrina and revoked her access to all systems, accounts, and donor information. The third appointed me interim chief restructuring officer with authority to preserve assets, communicate with law enforcement, and ensure continuity of services. Marcus protested every motion. The board approved all 3 unanimously. A hotel technician handed me a secure tablet. I entered a code prepared earlier with the foundation's bank. The primary operating accounts changed from active to restricted. Wire transfers now required approval from me and 2 independent board members. Corporate cards linked to Marcus and Sabrina were frozen and entirely in Editenini. Sabrina's phone vibrated in her hand. She looked down. The color vanished from her face again. What Marcus demanded. My cards were declined. Of course they were, I said. They were foundation cards. She looked up sharply. My apartment payment is due tomorrow. Rosa Alvarez stared at her. Women in my shelter wondered whether they would have beds tomorrow. Sabrina's mouth closed. I changed the presentation to a program impact ledger. Numbers alone can feel distant. So I had asked Maya to connect every diverted dollar to the service it had displaced. The screen showed 3 columns promised funding, money withheld, and human consequence. Haven House $200,000 withheld. 23 emergency beds lost for 9 weeks. Harbor Legal Clinic $140,000 withheld. 78 protective order cases delayed. North County Safe Transit $85,000 withheld. 2 vans repossessed. Leaving rural survivors without transportation. Children's Recovery Network $310,000 withheld. Trauma counseling waitlist increased from 12 days to 11 weeks. Each number had a name behind it. Udevines quote, 1. Each luxury expense had a cost measured in fear, hunger, and nights spent in unsafe places. A woman at table 32 stood with tears in her eyes. My company donated $500,000 for the children's counseling program. I recognized her as Miriam Sloan, chief executive of a pharmaceutical company. Your donation entered Bright Harbor's restricted account. I said, $270,000 was transferred out through a false allocation labeled Regional Media Education. It reached North Star in 4 installments. Miriam turned toward Marcus. You sent me photographs of children receiving care. The photographs were from last year. Maya said from the side entrance. Everyone turned. Maya Chen walked into the ballroom, carrying a sealed evidence case. She had resigned 4 months earlier after Marcus publicly claimed she lacked the sophistication to manage a growing organization. In reality, she had copied the accounting system before leaving and contacted regulators. Marcus looked as though he had been struck. You? Yes. Maya said. Me. You stole confidential data. I preserved records after you ordered me to delete vendor correspondence and backdate board approvals. That never happened. Maya placed the evidence case on the table. Your voice is on the recording. Tessa Grant stepped closer. Ms. Chen has been cooperating under a whistleblower agreement. The records were obtained and preserved with legal supervision. Marcus looked at me. You brought her here. She brought the truth. Maya connected a secure drive. The screen displayed an audio waveform. Marcus's recorded voice filled the ballroom. We do not need the board reading every invoice. Reclassify North Star under Emergency Program Communications. If Elena asks, tell her the shelter network changed, reporting standards. Clean the supporting documents before the audit. Then Sabrina's voice. What about the apartment? The lease is in my name. Marcus answered, route it through executive housing. By the time anyone notices, we will control the board. The recording ended. Sabrina stared at Marcus. You told me those calls were privileged. You knew what we were doing. Heh, he said. I knew you said it was legal. You signed the invoices. Because you told me to. There it is. Howard said softly. The first crack. Marcus turned toward the audience. Desperate to reclaim the narrative. Do not listen to Hare. Sabrina managed communications. Maya managed accounting. Elena had authority over programs. If money was misclassified, all of them are responsible. He pointed at me again. My wife signed annual reports. She sat on the board. She cannot pretend she knew nothing. That was the first strategically intelligent thing he had said all night. It was also the reason I had spent months preparing. You are correct. I said. I signed reports based on information you and Sabrina falsified. That is why I voluntarily disclosed my signatures to investigators, turned over my devices, and submitted to interviews before tonight. I have not asked for immunity. I have asked for the facts to determine responsibility. Tessa nodded. Mrs. Cross contacted our office through counsel and has cooperated fully. Evidence currently indicates that she raised internal concerns, was denied access, and preserved records after identifying discrepancies. Marcus's eyes narrowed. How long have you been investigating me? 6 months. He looked genuinely wounded, as though my secrecy were the betrayal that mattered. You slept beside me while building a case. You slept beside me while stealing from families in danger. The ballroom stayed silent. Marcus looked at my father. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You never respected me. You let your daughter marry me under a false identity so you could watch me fail. My father's expression remained still. I wanted my daughter to be loved. She believed you capable of it. I built something without your money. Elena built it with you. I made it visible. You made yourself visible. My father said. That is not the same thing. Marcus opened his mouth. But Sabrina spoke first. He promised me you were divorcing. She said to me. Her voice was quieter now. The triumph was gone. She looked suddenly younger, though not innocent. He said the marriage had been over for years. He said you stayed because you wanted access to his foundation. I almost laughed. He told you I needed access to him. He said you had no money of your own. Several guests murmured again. Sabrina touched the necklace carefully. I did not know it was stolen. You knew the foundation paid your apartment. I said. She swallowed. Marcus said it was part of my compensation. Was it in your employment agreement? No. Was the jewelry? No. The vacations, he called them work. Did you work? She looked toward the floor. Marcus stepped close enough to her that security moved between them. Do not say another word without a lawyer. Sabrina stared through the guard at him. You told me we were partners. We are. No. Partners know the truth. Her hand trembled as she reached for the clasp again. Tessa handed her a clear evidence bag. You may remove the necklace slowly and place it inside. Sabrina unfastened it. For the first time that night, the blue stone left her throat. She lowered the diamonds into the bag. Tessa sealed it, signed the label, and handed it to another investigator. I watched the necklace disappear into evidence custody. I had wanted it back immediately, but I understood that preserving the case mattered more than touching it. My mother had taught me patience too. The ballroom doors remained locked. The gala was over, but the reckoning had only begun. Daniel announced that guests would be released table by table after investigators collected contact information and secured copies of relevant recordings. The ballroom reacted with a mixture of relief and frustration. Some donors wanted to leave immediately. Others remained seated, unwilling to miss the collapse of a man they had applauded less than an hour earlier. Marcus tried to take advantage of the movement. While Tessa spoke with Howard, he slipped behind the stage toward the service corridor. A Vailcrest security officer blocked the door. I need my phone from the green room, Marcus said. It will be brought to you. It contains confidential Foundation communications. That is why you may not retrieve it unattended. Marcus lowered his voice. I can make this worth your time. The guard's body camera captured every word. Sir. Step away from the door. Marcus did. But his eyes continued searching. I knew that look. He was calculating which device, account, or person could still protect him. I asked Daniel to pull up the hotel network logs. The Foundation had used a temporary wireless network for event production. Every registered device appeared on a secure dashboard. Marcus's phone, laptop, and tablet were connected. Sabrina's devices were connected. So was a small portable server listed under the name BH Media Backup. Maya leaned over the tablet. That should not exist. What is it? I asked. Our media team uses cloud storage. We do not maintain a local backup server. Daniel called the technology director. Within minutes, security traced the device to a locked equipment case in the production room. The case was labeled with the logo of an outside audiovisual vendor, but the vendor supervisor denied ownership. Investigators opened it under camera. Inside was a compact encrypted server connected to the ballroom network. Its automated script was attempting to copy and overwrite files from Bright Harbor's shared drive. Marcus watched from 20 feet away. Tessa turned toward him. Do you know what that device is? No. Maya pointed to the purchase label on the underside. It was ordered through North Star. Sabrina closed her eyes. Did you authorize it? Tessa asked her. Sabrina looked at Marcus. He shook his head almost imperceptibly. That tiny movement decided something inside her. "Yes?" she said. Marcus swore under his breath. Sabrina continued before he could stop her. "Marcus told me we needed a secure backup in case Elena tried to access campaign files. He gave me a list of folders to mirror. Tonight, he said the server would run a cleanup program after the keynote. What did cleanup mean? He said it would remove duplicate drafts." Maya gave a humorless laugh. "It is targeting invoices, board minutes, and vendor emails." Tessa signaled to the digital forensics team. "Preserve the device exactly as found." Marcus stepped forward. "Sabrina does not understand technology. You are turning an ordinary backup process into obstruction. Then you will have an opportunity to explain it under oath," Tessa said. The room heard that sentence and understood its weight. A new problem appeared before the old one settled. The Foundation's bank called the emergency number on the restructuring protocol. A wire for $1 million had been initiated at 7:52 p.m. 8 minutes before I sent the message to stop the gala. The destination was an account in the name of Meridian Humanitarian Logistics. I had never heard of it. Maya pulled up the vendor file. The company had been added 3 days earlier. Its stated purpose was emergency transport for displaced families. Its mailing address matched a vacant warehouse outside Newark. The approving officers were Marcus and Sabrina. Sabrina shook her head. "I did not approve $1 million wire. Your digital signature is on it," Maya said. "I signed a vendor setup form. Marcus said it was for Gala transportation." Marcus's face remained unreadable. Tessa asked the bank to hold the wire. The transfer had not yet settled, but the receiving bank reported that the account was connected to an international payment platform. If the funds arrived, they could be fragmented and moved within minutes. "Who controls Meridian Humanitarian Logistics?" Howard asked. Maya began tracing the registration. The public records led to a nominee manager. The tax identification number led to a corporate services firm. The corporate services firm had created 6 other entities within the same week. One of those entities had purchased 2 one-way airline tickets departing from a private terminal at 2 a.m. The passenger names were Marcus Cross and Sabrina Cole. The ballroom reacted before either of them could speak. Sabrina turned toward Marcus so sharply that the diamonds of her earrings flashed. "You booked tickets," he said. "Nothing. For both of us, still nothing." "Where?" Tessa checked the itinerary. "Lisbon." Sabrina's confusion turned to fear. "You told me we were going to Washington tomorrow for a donor meeting." Marcus finally spoke. "The tickets were contingency planning." "For what contingency?" I asked. "You were sabotaging the foundation. I needed a location where we could continue operations if your father interfered." With $1 million of restricted charitable funds, it was temporary liquidity. Taken through a shell company, protective structuring. There was always a phrase. Theft became liquidity. Concealment became structuring. Lies became communications strategy. Abuse became crisis management. Sabrina backed away from him. "Were you planning to leave tonight?" Marcus's silence answered. "Were you going to tell me you were on the ticket?" "That is not what I asked." He lowered his voice. "We can still fix this if you stop panicking." Sabrina laughed once. But there was no humor in it. "You stole your wife's necklace. Put it on me. Dragged her across a ballroom in a hotel she owns. And tried to send $1 million out of the country. But I am panicking. The relationship that had seemed so powerful an hour earlier now looked like what it was: 2 ambitious people held together by secrecy and mutual benefit. Once secrecy failed, affection had nothing to stand on. Tessa separated them for interviews. Sabrina was escorted to a private salon with her attorney, whom the hotel contacted at her request. Marcus demanded to leave. Tessa explained that he was not under arrest, but that law enforcement had probable cause to seize his electronic devices and request a formal statement. He refused the statement. "I will speak only through counsel." He said. That is your right. He looked at me. You think you have won because your father closed some doors. No. I said. I think you lost because you opened too many accounts. He smiled with sudden coldness. You still do not know everything. The sentence could have been a bluff. Marcus lived by bluffs, but I saw something in his face that made me believe there was another layer. What do I not know? He leaned close enough that security prepared to intervene. Ask your father why he really gave us the hotel for free. Then he walked away with investigators. I turned toward my father. For the first time that night, Adrian Vale looked unsettled. I waited until the last guest had been released before confronting my father. It was nearly midnight. The ballroom looked exhausted. Half-filled glasses remained on tables. The flowers that had seemed magnificent at the beginning of the evening now looked artificial under the white security lights. Investigators occupied the front of the room. Imaging devices and sealing evidence. Hotel staff moved quietly around them. My father stood near the stage speaking with Daniel. When he saw me approaching, he dismissed everyone with a glance. What did Marcus mean? I asked. Elena. You have had a difficult night. That is not an answer. He looked toward the empty tables. The Grand Meridian did not provide the gala without cost. Marcus has told everyone for years that Daniel waived the fees. Daniel did waive them to Bright Harbor. Then who paid? My father took a slow breath. The Isabel Vale Community Trust. My mother's trust. The name reached somewhere deeper than anger. After my mother died, my father established a private charitable trust in her memory. I knew it funded libraries, shelters, scholarships, and medical programs. I did not know it funded Bright Harbor's gala. How much? Over 7 years. Approximately $9 million in hotel services, staffing, food, production, and security. I stared at him. 9 million. The trust considered the gala an in-kind grant, supporting your foundation. Did the board know? The early boards did. Marcus requested anonymity after the second year. He claimed public knowledge of the support would make donors believe Bright Harbor was controlled by Valecrest. And you agreed. I agreed because you believed in him. The answer sounded loving. It also sounded like a decision made around me. You let me think we were earning those hotel partnerships. You were earning donor trust. You let Marcus believe his reputation controlled this building. I did not control what he chose to believe. You funded the illusion. My father's expression hardened. I funded a charity that helped women and children. I did not fund his arrogance. But he knew. Yes. That explained Marcus's final threat. He knew the hotel was not free because of his name. He knew my father had been supporting us. Yet he still paraded the arrangement as proof of his own influence. When did he learn who I was? I asked. My father looked away. A cold pressure settled behind my ribs. Dad. 2 years ago. The ballroom seemed to tilt. No. He discovered the trust's name in an old in-kind donation schedule. He contacted my office privately. And you did not tell me. He asked for a meeting. I assumed he wanted to discuss your privacy. Instead, he demanded that the hotel subsidy continue and increase. What did you say? I said the trust would continue supporting Bright Harbor only while independent program audits confirmed that funds reached beneficiaries. Did the audits confirm that, at the time? Yes. The records were falsified later. I pressed my fingertips against the conference table to steady myself. Marcus had known for 2 years that I was Adrian Vale's daughter. He had continued mocking my modest clothes, dismissing my work, and telling Sabrina I had no money. He had not been deceived by my hidden identity. He had weaponized it. He knew. I repeated. My father nodded. Why would he pretend not to know tonight? Because admitting it would reveal that he had approached me behind your back. What else did he ask you for? My father hesitated again. Everything. I said. Tell me everything now. He proposed that Vailcrest acquire a major sponsorship position in Bright Harbor. He wanted a 10-year commitment, a private aircraft allocation, executive housing, and access to our donor hospitality program. He suggested that if I refused, he might tell you I had investigated him before your marriage. I looked up sharply. Did you? Yes. Of course he had. My father had investigated every serious relationship I had ever had. I knew that in theory. But hearing it attached to Marcus made the betrayal feel more intimate. What did you find? Nothing criminal then. Debt. Exaggerated credentials. 2 failed businesses. And a pattern of leaving organizations after financial disputes. Enough to concern me. Not enough to prove he would become this. And you kept quiet because you would have believed I was trying to control your life. You were trying to control my life. I was trying to protect you. By keeping information from me, his jaw tightened. You were determined to choose a life outside Vailcrest. Every warning from me became evidence. In your mind. That I did not trust your judgment. I did not want to lose you. So you let me marry him. You were an adult. I could not stop you. But you could have told me the truth. Yes. The admission was quiet and complete. It took some of the force out of my anger because he did not defend the mistake. I should have told you, he said. When Marcus contacted me 2 years ago, I should have ended the secrecy. I believed I could contain him without destroying your marriage. That was arrogance. I looked at the ballroom where my husband had dragged me before 600 witnesses. We both mistook silence for control. My father nodded. Daniel approached with a folder. Mrs. Cross. We found something in the Gala billing files. He placed 3 sets of invoices on the table. The first showed the Grand Meridian's actual in-kind contribution paid by my mother's trust. The second showed Bright Harbor's internal accounting. It recorded the same services as a $1.6 million Gala expense. The third showed donor-restricted funds being transferred to North Star under labels matching the hotel services. Marcus had billed the foundation for a gala that had already been paid for. Then he routed the duplicate expense to Sabrina's company. This year alone, I asked. Daniel nodded. The pattern appears in at least 4 prior galas. Maya joined us and reviewed the documents. He used the hotel's generosity as a template. Every donated service became a fake expense. Catering. Rooms. Lighting. Security. Transportation. North Star invoiced Bright Harbor for each category using amounts close enough to market rates to pass casual review. How much preliminary total? $8 million. My father's face went still. The money stolen through North Star was larger than we knew. More importantly, it had been concealed behind my mother's charity. Marcus had used the trust bearing her name to create phantom costs, then drained donor funds through the duplicate invoices. I thought of the necklace around Sabrina's throat. It was not just personal cruelty. It was a symbol of his entire method. He took something my mother had given, placed it on his mistress, and acted as though his possession made it legitimate. Preserve every gala invoice from the first year. I told Maya, cross-reference hotel in-kind records against Bright Harbor expenses. Contact every vendor listed. I want confirmations, bank destinations, and beneficial owners. My father watched me take control. You should rest. I will rest when the programs are protected. Elena, no. I faced him. You do not get to decide what I can handle tonight. Not after deciding what I should know for 2 years. He accepted the boundary without protest. Understood. I turned to Daniel. Can the hotel provide temporary workspace for our restructuring team? The entire executive conference floor is available. Not as a gift. He glanced at my father. I continued. Bright Harbor will pay a documented market rate after the board approves it. No hidden subsidies. No private arrangements. My father's eyes met mine. Agreed. At 1:30 in the morning, the emergency restructuring team moved upstairs. Maya led forensic accounting. Howard handled board authority. Vailcrest Counsel coordinated with investigators, while an independent nonprofit attorney reviewed conflicts. I took the office at the end of the hall and removed my wedding ring. The pale strip of skin beneath it looked vulnerable, almost unfinished. I placed the ring in an envelope and wrote the date across the seal. My phone contained 37 missed calls from Marcus's attorney, 11 from reporters, and one message from an unknown number. I opened it. You think the Gala was the worst thing he did? Check the Cedar House files before they disappear. No name. No explanation. Cedar House was one of Bright Harbor's largest residential programs. A 40-bed transitional facility for mothers and children. Marcus had praised it in speeches for years. I searched our internal system. The Cedar House folder was empty. A second message arrived. Ask where the women went when the building closed for renovation. Cedar House was supposed to be proof that Bright Harbor had matured beyond temporary aid. 5 years earlier, we had purchased a former convent outside the city and renovated it into transitional housing. The building had private rooms, a licensed childcare center, classrooms, and a legal clinic. Donors loved Cedar House because it was tangible. They could visit, walk through sunlit hallways, and see names engraved on plaques. Marcus used photographs of the building in nearly every major campaign. According to public materials, Cedar House had closed 6 months earlier for structural repairs. I remembered approving a preliminary inspection after cracks appeared in a rear stairwell. What I did not remember was approving a full closure. I called Rosa Alvarez. She answered on the second ring despite the hour. Elena, I need to ask about Cedar House. There was a pause. What about it? Where did the residents go when it closed? Rosa's voice changed. You do not know. No. Marcus said you approved the relocation. What relocation? 14 families were sent to motels for 2 weeks. After that, the funding stopped. Some came to us. Some went back to relatives. 2 women returned to their abusers because they had nowhere else to go. I closed my eyes. Why was the building closed? We were told black mold and foundation damage. Did anyone provide reports? Marcus's office sent a summary. We never saw the inspection. Who is managing the property now? I thought Bright Harbor still owned it. Sue had I. Maya searched county property records. Cedar House had been transferred 4 months earlier to a limited liability company called Cobalt Renewal Partners for 3 Pruses to Dacian, Maine. $2 million. Bright Harbor's original purchase price and renovations had exceeded $9 million. The deed carried my electronic signature. I had never seen it. Howard read the transfer documents twice. The board did not authorize a sale. The notary acknowledgement listed a person who had retired the previous year, under percent in ISID. The board resolution attached to the deed contained the names of directors who had not attended the supposed meeting. The signatures were digital images copied from unrelated documents. Forgery. Maya said. Who owns Cobalt? I asked. The ownership chain ran through 2 states and ended at a real estate fund based in Nevada. That fund's managing partner was Victor Dane, one of Marcus's oldest friends. Victor had attended the gala and left with the first group of guests. Daniel checked hotel records. Victor had not returned to his suite. His luggage was gone. Tessa issued an alert to local law enforcement and asked the airport authority to flag his name. I returned to the anonymous messages. Who are you? I typed. The reply came after several minutes. Someone who lived there. I asked for a safe way to speak. The person sent a number and requested that I call from a phone not connected to Bright Harbor. Daniel provided a secure line. A woman answered. Her name was Leah Morgan. She had entered Cedar House with her 6-year-old daughter after her former boyfriend broke her jaw. She had stayed there 8 months and later joined the staff as an overnight resident coordinator. Marcus started visiting after midnight. Leah said, "He said he was checking security, but he always went into the administrative office. Sabrina came with him twice. They removed boxes." "What kind of boxes? Resident files?" "Donation records." I asked why. And the next week I was fired for violating confidentiality. "Did you see the inspection report?" "There was no mold." A contractor came, looked at the stairwell, and said the repair would take 3 days. 2 weeks later, Marcus announced the whole building was unsafe. "We had 48 hours to move everyone. Why contact me now?" "Because I saw the gala on a live stream. I saw him drag you. When your father stopped the event, I realized maybe you were not part of it." The sentence hurt more than I expected. People had believed I was part of Marcus's crimes because my name was on the foundation. They had no reason to know I had been excluded. My silence, however strategic, had protected the investigation while allowing him to use my credibility. "I am sorry," I told her. "For what? For not seeing what happened sooner? You cannot apologize people back into housing." "No, but I can restore what was taken." Leah gave me the name of a former maintenance employee who had copied files before the closure. By sunrise, investigators had obtained a sworn statement and photographs of the building taken the day after Marcus declared it unsafe. The rooms were intact. No mold containment. No structural barriers. Instead, contractors were removing furniture and donor plaques. Cobalt Renewal Partners had submitted plans to convert Cedar House into a private wellness retreat with 12 luxury suites. The brochure described the property as a secluded sanctuary for executive renewal. My stomach turned as I read it. A building purchased with donations for women escaping violence was being transformed into a spa for wealthy executives. The same bedrooms where mothers had held frightened children would become meditation rooms and wine lounges. Maya found the money trail. Cobalt had paid $2 million for the property, but only $800,000 reached Bright Harbor's bank account. The remaining $4 million went to a temporary escrow service controlled by an attorney connected to Victor. From there, payments moved to North Star, Marcus's personal credit line, and a company that owned a yacht called Second Chance. The yacht's photographs showed Marcus and Sabrina smiling on the deck during a weekend they had told me was a regional donor summit. Howard removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "How did our auditors miss this?" "They reviewed documents provided by management," Maya said. "The documents were forged around real transactions. A legitimate sale price appeared on the deed. A legitimate deposit appeared in the account. The missing funds moved before closing through an escrow instruction the auditors never received." "Who approved the auditors?" I asked. "Marcus." "Who was the engagement partner?" Maya checked. The name was Philip Rowe. I knew it. Philip had attended 3 Bright Harbor galas and played golf with Marcus. He was also listed as a board observer for one of Victor Dane's companies. The scheme was no longer a private affair with inflated invoices. It was an organized network using a charity's reputation to acquire assets, divert funds, and disguise personal enrichment. At 6:30, Tessa returned from interviewing Sabrina. She wants to cooperate. Fully. She says she will provide passwords, communication, and information about Victor in exchange for consideration. She claims Marcus designed the financial structure. Maya shook her head. She signed invoices and controlled North Star. Tessa knows that, Howard said. I asked, "What does Sabrina know about Cedar House?" She says she developed the luxury retreat rebranding materials. She claims Marcus told her Bright Harbor had legally sold an underperforming asset. Did she know residents had been displaced? She says no. Leah's statement contradicted that. Sabrina had visited Cedar House during the late-night removal of files. "Do not show her everything we have," I said. "Let her tell the story before she knows which parts can be disproved." Tessa studied me. You understand I do not take investigative instructions from a complainant. I understand. I am asking you not to let her cooperation become another communications strategy. A slight smile touched Tessa's face. That concern is already noted. At 7, Daniel brought coffee and a clean blazer for me. He also brought an update. Hotel security had located Marcus's attorney in the lobby. Marcus had been released after his devices were seized because no arrest warrant had yet been issued. He wanted access to his suite, clothes, and vehicle. Give him his personal clothing after it is inventoried. I said. The suite remains secured if investigators request it, and the vehicle I checked the registration. The black luxury SUV Marcus drove was leased through Bright Harbor. Revoke his authorization. Daniel nodded. Marcus appeared outside the conference room glass 10 minutes later. He wore the same tuxedo, now wrinkled, without the polished confidence it had carried hours earlier. His attorney stood beside him. Security remained between us. Elena, Marcus said through the open doorway. We need 5 minutes alone. No, this is still a marriage. No, it is evidence. His attorney placed a hand on his shoulder. But Marcus stepped forward. Your father hid money from you. He investigated me. He bought influence over our foundation. Yet I am the villain because I used resources to grow it. You sold Cedar House. He stopped. The silence told me the anonymous tip had reached exactly where it needed to. Who told you? He asked. That matters less than whether it is true. The property was failing. You forged my signature. We had authority under emergency asset provisions. You displaced families and sold a $9 million charitable property for $2 million to your friend. Victor offered the only immediate liquidity. Then you diverted $4 million from escrow. His attorney whispered urgently. But Marcus ignored him. You have no idea how difficult it was to keep Bright Harbor alive. He said. Donors wanted spectacle. Programs wanted cash. The board wanted clean reports. Your father wanted control. Everyone demanded something. I did what was necessary. You bought a yacht. His eyes flickered. You turned Cedar House into executive suites. That project would have generated revenue. For whom? For the foundation eventually. No. For you. Sabrina. And Victor. Marcus's anger shifted into something colder. You were never capable of understanding scale. You think helping one woman is enough. I was building an institution. You were building a stage. And people gave because I was on it. People gave because they believed the money would protect families. Belief is what fundraising is. No. I said. Trust is. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he lowered his voice. You will regret destroying me. Bright Harbor cannot survive without my name. I glanced at the program impact ledger. The evidence cases. And the women already working to restore what he had taken. Then it was never a charity. I said, it was a hostage situation. By 8 that morning, clips from the gala had spread across every major social platform. The first video showed Sabrina wearing the necklace while I demanded its return. The second showed Marcus gripping my arm and dragging me across the ballroom. The third began with my text and ended with every executive standing as my father entered. The internet reduced the most painful night of my life to a sequence of dramatic moments, each replayed millions of times without context. Some viewers called me brave. Others accused me of staging the confrontation for publicity. Commentators debated whether my family ownership made me a victim or a privileged woman, settling a personal score. Marcus's communications instincts had not disappeared simply because Sabrina's corporate cards were frozen. By 9, an anonymous statement reached several reporters. It described Marcus as the target of a hostile takeover by the billionaire Vale family. It claimed I had neglected the foundation, hidden my identity from my husband, and used hotel security to detain donors after suffering a jealous breakdown. It suggested that all payments to North Star had been legitimate and approved by me. The statement included photographs of me entering the Vailcrest executive floor after midnight, framed as proof that the financial allegations had been coordinated by my father. Sabrina denied authorizing the release. Marcus's attorney denied it as well. The language, however, carried Sabrina's fingerprints, emotionally neutral, strategically vague, and designed to make every fact feel like a matter of interpretation. I wanted to answer immediately. Maya stopped me. "Do not fight a document dump with a social media argument," she said. "Publish verified facts through the board." She was right. At noon, Howard issued a formal Bright Harbor statement announcing the suspensions, independent forensic review, account restrictions, and cooperation with authorities. We did not disclose confidential evidence. We listed the programs whose funding would continue without interruption and created a hotline for partner organizations. Then I recorded a 60-second statement in the same ballroom where Marcus had dragged me. "My name is Elena Vale Cross," I said into the camera. "I co-founded Bright Harbor to help families escape violence, not to finance luxury for its executives. The board has secured the foundation's accounts and appointed independent professionals to review every transaction. Our first obligation is to the people whose safety depends on these programs. Verified findings will be released through lawful channels. I will not litigate evidence through rumor." I did not mention the affair. I did not mention the necklace. I did not mention my father's wealth. I spoke only about the mission. The response changed quickly. Shelter directors shared the statement. Former employees began contacting the hotline. Vendors provided invoices. Donors requested private briefings instead of refunds. Several major sponsors offered bridge funding if the foundation installed independent controls. Marcus responded by filing for divorce. The petition arrived that afternoon. It accused me of emotional cruelty, deception, unlawful surveillance, and interference with his employment. It sought half of all marital assets and claimed an interest in my Vailcrest shares because I had allegedly concealed them during the marriage. My attorney, Claire Donnelly. Read the petition in silence before looking up. He is not asking for a settlement. He is writing a press release in the form of a lawsuit. Can he claim the shares? They were placed in trust before the marriage and maintained separately. He signed a prenuptial agreement acknowledging that any family holdings discovered later would remain separate property. He signed it without knowing the amount. He signed it after independent counsel advised him, "The agreement does not require you to disclose a public valuation of a discretionary trust, only its existence." He initialed that section. Marcus had mocked the prenup at the time. He said people without meaningful assets worried too much about protecting them. He signed because he believed it shielded his future success from me. "What about Bright Harbor?" I asked. "A nonprofit has no marital owner. Neither of you owns it." That is part of his confusion. The divorce petition contained one useful attachment, a sworn financial declaration. Marcus listed personal assets of less than $200,000 and denied any ownership in North Star. Cobalt, Meridian Humanitarian Logistics, or the yacht company. Maya smiled when she saw it. He just committed himself to a story. Within hours, investigators found transfers showing that Marcus had paid the yacht's insurance from his personal account. A private loan agreement named him as beneficial co-owner of Cobalt. An encrypted message to Victor referred to our property and promised to split profits after the wellness retreat opened. Every aggressive move he made created another contradiction. That evening, my father asked me to come to his penthouse. I almost refused. I had not forgiven him for keeping Marcus's knowledge secret. But exhaustion had sharpened my anger into questions, and I needed answers. The penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of the Grand Meridian. My mother had designed part of it before she became ill. Her influence remained in the warm wood, blue silk panels, and books arranged by subject rather than color. My father stood by the windows overlooking the city. "I have prepared a trust transfer," he said. "Your remaining Veilcrest inheritance can be accelerated. You should take formal control now." "No." He turned. "Marcus has exposed your identity. Privacy is no longer possible. That does not mean I should make a life-changing decision tonight. You have spent years refusing authority you were trained to hold. I spent years building something of my own. And Marcus corrupted it. Marcus corrupted his choices. Bright Harbor still belongs to its mission." My father looked frustrated. "You are defending an institution that failed under your name. I am taking responsibility for repairing it. Veilcrest needs you. So do the families whose funding disappeared. You can do both. Perhaps one day. But I will not let tonight become the story of a powerful father restoring his daughter to the throne. I am not a princess returning to a castle. I am a co-founder cleaning up a charity I should have watched more carefully." He was silent. "I am grateful you came." I continued. "I am grateful you protected the hotel, preserved the evidence, and stood beside me. But I need you to understand something. When you kept Marcus's meeting secret, you treated me the way he did. You both decided I could not handle the truth. The comparison hurt him. I saw it. I never intended to diminish you." He said, "Intent does not erase consequence." He nodded slowly. "What do you want from me?" "Transparency. No hidden subsidies. No private negotiations about my life. If Veilcrest supports Bright Harbor, it does so through a documented board-approved grant with conditions everyone can see. And personally, I want my father. Not my rescuer. Not my strategist. My father." For a long moment, Adrian Vale looked less like a billionaire chairman and more like a widower who had nearly lost the only family he had left. "I can try," he said. "That is enough for tonight." Before I left, he handed me a small framed photograph. My mother stood on a hotel balcony wearing the blue diamond necklace. I had never seen the picture. "She chose that necklace herself," he said. "I claimed it was my gift because she thought the story sounded more romantic. Your mother disliked diamonds until she realized people underestimated a woman wearing them. She said the necklace reminded her that beauty could also be armor." I held the photograph carefully. "She would have been proud of you tonight," he added. I was dragged across a ballroom. You chose when the room stopped. I returned to the conference floor shortly before midnight. On my desk, an envelope waited without a name. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note. "Marcus has a second donor list. These people were promised access to women housed by Bright Harbor. Check the private dinners." The allegation was so disturbing that for several seconds I could not move. I called Tessa immediately. The flash drive contained calendars, guest manifests, and photographs from invitation-only events called Founders' Circles. Marcus had described them to the board as cultivation dinners for high-level donors. The events had taken place in private hotel suites. Bright Harbor program participants had been invited to share survival stories. At first, the records looked inappropriate but not criminal. Then Maya found coded notes beside several donors' names vulnerable. No local family. Attractive on camera. Needs housing extension. The same notes appeared in follow-up emails from Marcus to a former program director. One message asked her to arrange a private mentorship introduction between a donor and a 24. The former director had replied, "This violates every boundary we have. I will not do it." She was terminated 2 days later. My hands shook as I read the messages. The theft of money was devastating. This was worse. Marcus had viewed the women Bright Harbor served as assets he could display, trade, and use to reward wealthy men. We contacted the former director, Dr. Camille Ross. She confirmed that Marcus pressured program staff to bring residents to donor dinners without advocates present. She had stopped at least 3 private introductions and warned the board chair at the time. Her complaint never reached Howard. It had been routed to Sabrina, who classified it as an employee performance issue. "Did anyone get hurt?" I asked. Camille's silence lasted too long. One woman reported that a donor entered her hotel room after a dinner. She said he claimed Marcus had given him permission to check on her. Nothing was prosecuted. She disappeared from the program the next morning. What was her name? Janelle Price. We searched the database. Janelle's file had been deleted. The charity I loved had not merely been used as an ATM. Under Marcus. It had begun to reproduce the very power dynamics it claimed to fight. I walked alone into the empty ballroom. The stage had been dismantled. Only the outline of the foundation's logo remained on the back wall. I thought about every time I had accepted Marcus's explanation that growth required compromise, every time I allowed him to isolate me from operations because I believed preserving the marriage might preserve the mission. This was the cost of confusing peace with goodness. Silence did not prevent harm. It only made harm easier to hide. At 2 a.m, I made a decision that would anger donors, damage the brand, and possibly end Bright Harbor entirely. I called Howard. "We need to suspend all fundraising," I said. He inhaled sharply. "For how long until every program? Donor interaction and resident safety procedure is independently reviewed. That could take months. We may not survive. Then we do not survive. A charity has no right to exist if protecting its reputation matters more than protecting the people it serves." Howard was silent. "Finally," he said, "I will call the board." The board meeting began at 4 a.m. and lasted 3 hours. Several directors argued that suspending fundraising would punish legitimate programs for Marcus's misconduct. They were not wrong. Bright Harbor funded rent, legal services, childcare, and transportation that could not simply pause while accountants searched records. I proposed separating survival from image. We would stop public fundraising, promotional campaigns, and gala solicitation. At the same time, Vailcrest and 3 existing donors would place $20 million into a temporary relief account administered by an independent community foundation. Bright Harbor would have no unilateral control over it. Partner shelters could apply directly for emergency reimbursements while the review continued. My father agreed to contribute $8 million from my mother's trust. But this time the terms were written, disclosed, and approved in open session. Miriam Sloan pledged $5 million hourly. 2 other donors committed the remainder. Howard called the motion. It passed 5-1. The dissenting director resigned immediately and later appeared on television claiming I had engineered a family takeover. By then, I understood that every system has people who prefer a comfortable lie to a disruptive truth. At 9, we published the suspension notice. Donations already received would be restricted from executive spending. New gifts would be directed to the independent relief account. Former clients received a private reporting channel. Employees were guaranteed pay for 60 days while investigators reviewed their roles. The reaction was brutal. News programs called it the collapse of Bright Harbor. Social media users accused us of abandoning survivors. Marcus gave an interview from his attorney's office and claimed I was destroying the foundation out of revenge. He looked tired but carefully composed. He wore a navy suit and no wedding ring. "My wife has always struggled with insecurity," he told the reporter. "When she learned about an emotional relationship between Sabrina and me, she used her family's corporate power to seize an organization I created. The financial allegations are accounting disagreements. The dramatic lockdown at the gala was designed to humiliate me." The reporter asked about the video of him dragging me. Marcus looked directly into the camera. "I was trying to remove an intoxicated person from a high-pressure environment before she harmed herself or others." The lie was astonishing in its confidence. The hotel released a verified statement confirming that I had consumed no alcohol and that Marcus had no authority to direct security. It also confirmed that the ballroom closure had been initiated under a law enforcement evidence preservation protocol. We released no emotional response. Then Tessa obtained a warrant for the contents of the backup server. The server contained deleted donor files, fabricated invoices, and a hidden archive called Legacy Circle. Inside were photographs, audio recordings, and profiles of Bright Harbor residents. Marcus had categorized women according to appearance, education, family connections, immigration status, and willingness to participate in donor events. One profile belonged to Janelle Price. She was 24 when she entered Cedar House with a toddler. Her former partner had stalked her across 2 states. The profile described her as articulate, photogenic, and highly grateful. An attached note from Marcus read, "Ideal for Whitcomb dinner. Keep placement dependent on participation." The donor was Charles Whitcomb, owner of a regional construction company and one of Bright Harbor's earliest major sponsors. He had died the previous year. His estate records contained a confidentiality payment of $75,000 to Janelle through an attorney. We found her living under a different surname in New Mexico. Tessa contacted her through a victim advocate. Janelle agreed to speak only if I was not present. She believed I had approved the donor program. I respected her decision. The investigators later told me only what she permitted them to share. Whitcomb had entered her hotel room after a private dinner and assaulted her. When she reported it, Marcus warned that public accusations could damage Bright Harbor and expose her location to her former partner. Sabrina drafted the confidentiality agreement. The payment came from foundation funds disguised as emergency relocation assistance. I sat in my office after receiving the summary and felt something inside me break. There are moments when guilt becomes self-indulgent. I could have collapsed under the knowledge that my signature appeared on reports while this happened. I could have centered my pain and demanded forgiveness from people who owed me nothing. Instead, I wrote down every decision I should have questioned, every access restriction I should have challenged, every employee who had disappeared after disagreeing with Marcus. Then I asked Camille Ross to lead an independent survivor safety commission with full authority to inspect Bright Harbor's history. She accepted only after I agreed that neither I nor my father could remove her without a public board vote. "You may not like what we find," she warned. "I already do not like what we found. You may be named in the report. Then name me." That afternoon, Sabrina requested a meeting through her attorney. Tessa permitted me to attend as a representative of the foundation. Provided I did not discuss charging decisions, Sabrina entered the conference room without makeup, wearing a plain gray sweater. She looked nothing like the woman who had crossed the ballroom in silver, with my mother's diamonds around her throat. Her attorney placed a thick folder on the table. "Ms. Cole intends to provide communications, account credentials, and information concerning Marcus Cross, Victor Dane, Philip Rowe, and others. She acknowledges her role in undisclosed conflicts and false billing. She disputes involvement in violence or coercion against program participants." I looked at Sabrina. "Did you draft Janelle Price's confidentiality agreement?" Her eyes moved to her attorney. "You may answer," he said. "Yes." "Did you know why she was being paid?" Marcus said a donor had behaved inappropriately, and Janelle wanted a private resolution. "Did you speak with her?" "No." "Did you ask whether she had independent counsel?" "No." "Did you classify the payment as relocation assistance?" "Yes." Why Marcus said disclosure would destroy the foundation. I felt no satisfaction in her fear. "And you believed protecting the foundation meant hiding what happened to her?" Sabrina lowered her eyes. "I believed protecting Marcus protected the foundation." "That belief paid your rent." "Yes." The honesty surprised me. She opened the folder. Inside were printed messages between her and Marcus, spanning 3 years. Some were intimate. Others discussed invoices, donor manipulation, and strategies for isolating me. One message from Marcus read, "Elena is useful as long as she remains uncertain. Keep board materials technical and schedule reviews when she is with program staff." Another, "Her father will keep paying because he is afraid she will learn. He investigated me." Another, "Once the trust commitment is renewed, I can file for divorce. She will look like a jealous, dependent wife. And no one will believe she built any of this." Sabrina watched me read. "He never planned to stay married to you." She said, "I understand that now. He told me after the gala we would leave for Lisbon, use the offshore account, and start a private social impact fund. Did he tell you the money was charitable? He said it was management compensation we were owed. Did you believe that at first? And later?" She looked toward the window. "Later I stopped asking questions because I liked the answers I was getting." That sentence was the closest thing to accountability I had heard from her. She slid a smaller envelope across the table. There was something else. Inside was a key and a storage unit receipt. Marcus kept physical files outside the office. She said, "He called it insurance. He told me that if the board turned against him, he could destroy donors, employees, and your father with what was inside. Where the unit is in my name. He believed that made it untraceable." Tessa took the key. "What kind of files?" "Recordings of private conversations, copies of passports, medical histories from program applicants, donor tax information, photographs." The room chilled. "He used survivors' confidential files as leverage," I asked. "He used everyone's secrets as leverage." Tessa obtained an emergency warrant. The storage facility was 30 minutes away. Inside the unit, investigators found 22 boxes, 3 locked cabinets, and 2 computers. One cabinet contained the original Cedar House resident files. Another contained documents connected to Vailcrest. My father's name appeared across the first folder. Marcus had collected evidence about him for years. Bank records, old lawsuits, internal hotel reports, photographs of my father meeting politicians and union leaders. Most of it was public or harmless. One document was not. It was a confidential engineering report concerning a balcony collapse at a Vailcrest hotel 12 years earlier. 3 guests had been injured. The report suggested a regional executive delayed repairs after receiving warnings. Vailcrest had settled the cases. My father had told the board he learned of the warnings only after the accident. Attached to Marcus's copy was an email that appeared to show my father receiving the warning 2 weeks before the collapse. If authentic, it meant Adrian Vale had lied under oath. Marcus had not been bluffing when he said I did not know everything. I brought the engineering report to my father myself. He read the email twice without speaking. The message had been sent from the hotel's regional engineering director to an executive distribution list that included my father. The subject line was routine exterior maintenance review. Buried in the 3rd paragraph was a warning that corrosion beneath the balcony anchors could create a failure risk if repairs were delayed. "Did you receive this?" I asked. "I received hundreds of reports a week." "That is not what I asked." He looked at the metadata. "Yes. It reached my office." "Did you read it?" "I do not remember." "After the collapse, you testified that no warning reached senior leadership. My legal team told me no material warning had been escalated. This was classified as routine maintenance. But it contains a warning." "Yes." The word sat heavily between us. My father could have instructed his lawyers to attack the document, hide behind privilege, or argue that Marcus obtained it illegally. Instead, he placed it back on the table. "What will you do?" I asked. "What do you think I should do? I am not your board. You are my daughter. That is why I cannot make this decision for you." He walked to the window. The city reflected faintly in the glass, making him look suspended between his office and the skyline he had spent a lifetime trying to conquer. When the accident happened, I was in London negotiating an acquisition. He said. The regional team told me a decorative balcony rail had failed unexpectedly. I accepted their summary. 3 people were injured. We paid their medical expenses and settlements. I ordered inspections across the company. I believed I had acted responsibly. Did you ask whether anyone had warned the company? I asked counsel. They said no actionable warning had reached the board. Not the same as no warning existing. No. He turned back toward me. Marcus collected this to blackmail me. That does not make the document unimportant. I know. I had never heard my father sound tired before. Angry. Controlled. Disappointed. Even grieving, but not tired. I will give it to the Valecrest Audit Committee. He said. I will step aside from any review. If my testimony was inaccurate, it will be corrected. And if there is legal exposure, then I face it. The answer relieved me and frightened me at the same time. You do not have to protect me. He added. I am not protecting you. I am asking you to protect the truth. He nodded. Your mother used to say the same thing, more gently. Within 2 hours, Valecrest announced an independent investigation into the old accident and my father's testimony. Adrian Vale temporarily delegated day-to-day chairman duties to the lead independent director. The company's stock dropped 4% by the end of trading. Reporters described the announcement as a crisis expanding from Bright Harbor into Valecrest. Marcus's attorney contacted mine that evening. The proposal was simple. Marcus would provide context showing that the engineering email had been intentionally suppressed by my father. In exchange, I would support a private resolution of the Bright Harbor investigation, release marital claims, and publicly state that Marcus's conduct at the gala resulted from emotional stress rather than abuse. Claire Donnelly read the proposal aloud, then placed it on her desk. He is offering blackmail through counsel without calling it blackmail. Send it to Tessa. Immediately. Marcus called me from another number before his attorney could stop him. You are destroying your father now. He said. No. He turned the document over himself. There was a long silence. He did what he disclosed it to the independent directors. You are lying. He stepped back from the review. Marcus's voice sharpened. Do you understand what that file can do to Valecrest? Yes. And you handed it over? Yes. You are insane. No. Marcus, you built your entire strategy around everyone fearing exposure more than they valued truth. That is why none of your leverage works now. He breathed heavily into the phone. You think your father is noble. He bought silence for years. Then the investigation will find it. You will lose everything. If everything depends on hiding harm, it was never worth owning. He hung up. The next morning, authorities arrested Victor Dane at a private airfield. He carried 2 passports, $90,000 in cash, and a laptop containing draft agreements for the Cedar House Wellness Retreat. The documents identified Marcus as a 40% silent partner and Sabrina as marketing director. Philip Rowe, the auditor, resigned from his firm after investigators confronted him with messages showing he had accepted luxury travel in exchange for limiting audit procedures. His employer turned over its files and announced an internal review. The receiving bank permanently blocked the $1 million transfer. Meridian Humanitarian Logistics had no real operations. The account application used a forged letter from Howard and a copy of my signature taken from a grant approval. Then came the arrest warrants. Marcus was charged initially with wire fraud, conspiracy, theft from a charitable organization, attempted obstruction, and unlawful transfer of restricted funds. Additional charges related to Cedar House and the donor program remained under review. Sabrina was charged with conspiracy, false statements, and financial offenses, but entered cooperation negotiations. Victor faced fraud, money laundering, and property transfer charges. Police arrested Marcus outside a television studio where he had scheduled another interview. The footage showed him turning toward the cameras as officers approached. Even then, he tried to perform. "This is retaliation," he shouted. "My wife's family owns the city." No one dragged him. Officers placed him in handcuffs, explained his rights, and guided him into a vehicle while reporters called questions he could no longer control. Bright Harbor employees watched the arrest from the conference floor, off-play. Some cried. Some looked relieved. Others sat in stunned silence because the man they had admired and feared had become a defendant in a case built from their own records. I felt no victory. Arrest is not restoration. It does not reopen a shelter, return a stolen night of safety, or erase the moment a husband's hand closes around his wife's arm. It only creates a boundary society should have enforced earlier. The necklace was returned to me 3 weeks later after investigators completed their initial examination. Tessa brought it personally in the same sealed evidence bag. I did not put it on. I took it to my father's penthouse and placed it beside the photograph of my mother. "Keep it in the family vault," I said. My father looked surprised. "It belongs to you." "I know. I will wear it when it no longer feels like evidence." He closed the velvet box. "That may take time." "I have time." The independent Vailcrest investigation lasted 4 months. It concluded that my father had received the maintenance email, but that the risk language had been diluted through several management layers. Investigators found no proof that he knowingly concealed an imminent danger before the accident. They did find governance failures, inadequate escalation protocols, and an overly legalistic response after the collapse. My father corrected his prior testimony in a formal filing, apologized to the injured guests, and established a compensation process beyond the original settlements. He also remained temporarily separated from the chairman role while Vailcrest rebuilt its safety system. Some people called the response excessive. My father did not. I spent years believing control meant preventing weakness from becoming visible. He told me, "Marcus understood that weakness in me. He just did not understand that you had changed it." "I did not change you. You made hiding more shameful than admitting the mistake." That was as close to gratitude as Adrian Vale usually came. Bright Harbor's forensic review uncovered $11.7 million in misappropriated or improperly classified spending over 4 years. We recovered $6.3 million through frozen accounts, insurance claims, settlements, and asset seizures. The yacht was sold. Sabrina's apartment lease was terminated. Jewelry purchased through North Star was surrendered. Cobalt's ownership of Cedar House was voided after the court found the transfer fraudulent. The building came back to the charity. Restoring the mission was harder than recovering the title. Cedar House had been stripped of furniture and damaged by unfinished luxury renovations. Walls had been removed. Plumbing was exposed. Donor plaques had been broken and discarded. Yet when I walked through the building with Leah Morgan, she did not look at the destruction with despair. They tried to turn it into something it was never meant to be. She said, "We can do the same in reverse." We hired local contractors at transparent rates. Vailcrest donated rooms for displaced families under a public agreement monitored by the Independent Community Foundation. Former residents helped redesign Cedar House, adding private family kitchens, stronger security, and an on-site medical suite. Every decision was reviewed by people who had actually used the program. The new entrance contained no photograph of Marcus, my father, or me. It displayed a simple sentence chosen by the residents: "Safety is not a gift from powerful people. It is a right." The criminal case did not resolve as quickly as the public expected. Real investigations rarely move at the speed of a viral video. For months, attorneys argued over devices, account records, witness statements, and the scope of search warrants. Marcus's defense team attacked every procedural decision. They claimed the hotel lockdown was unlawful, that Sabrina's cooperation was coerced, that Maya had stolen records, and that my father's corporate influence had contaminated the investigation. The court rejected most of those arguments. The ballroom doors had remained closed for less than 20 minutes under a documented evidence preservation request. Guests had been released after their information was recorded. The hotel had not searched anyone. Digital records had been obtained through warrants and subpoenas. The dramatic setting made the case famous. But the evidence did not depend on drama. It depended on signatures. Marcus had approved the North Star invoices. He had instructed Maya to alter classifications. He had signed the Cedar House escrow directions. He had reserved the Lisbon tickets. He had attempted to transfer $1 million as the Gala began collapsing around him. He had recorded himself describing residents as donor assets. He had sworn in the divorce case that he owned no interest in companies his own messages called ours. Numbers do not become less true because the person reading them has a powerful father. Sabrina accepted a plea agreement first. She admitted to conspiracy, undisclosed self-dealing, falsifying invoices, and helping conceal the Cedar House transfer. Her cooperation reduced her potential sentence, but it did not erase it. She surrendered the apartment furnishings, jewelry, investment accounts, and the proceeds of North Star. She also agreed to testify against Marcus and Victor. Before sentencing, Sabrina requested permission to address me through her attorney. I agreed to receive a written letter, but not a private meeting. The letter was 6 pages long. She apologized for the affair, the necklace, the lies, and the money. She said she had spent years believing that being chosen by a powerful man proved she had become powerful herself. She admitted that my humiliation at the gala had made her feel victorious because Marcus had convinced her only one of us could matter. One line stayed with me. I thought wearing your mother's necklace meant he had given me your place. But the place he offered me was inside his crime. I did not write back. Forgiveness is not a performance owed to someone because they finally understand the damage. I gave the letter to my attorney and returned to work. Victor Dane pleaded guilty after the government traced the Cedar House proceeds into his development fund. Philip Rowe lost his accounting license and faced separate charges for falsifying audit documentation. Charles Whitcomb's estate agreed to fund survivor compensation after Janelle's attorney reopened her case. Marcus refused every plea offer. He insisted a jury would see him as a visionary, punished by a wealthy family. His lawyers built their defense around that story. They portrayed Bright Harbor as an organization dependent on his charisma and described the diverted spending as aggressive but necessary fundraising investment. They argued that executive housing, luxury travel, and image consulting attracted donors who ultimately gave more than the expenses cost. The prosecution answered with people. Rosa described closing shelter rooms while Bright Harbor delayed funds. Leah described families receiving 48 hours notice to leave Cedar House. Camille described being fired after refusing to place residents alone with donors. Maya explained the duplicate invoices line by line. Sabrina identified Marcus's instructions and secret accounts. Janelle testified behind privacy protections. The courtroom was closed for part of her testimony. I did not attend those hours because she had asked that no Bright Harbor executive be present. What she gave the court belonged to her, not to our need for redemption. When my turn came, Marcus looked at me for the first time in months. He appeared smaller without a ballroom, a stage, or employees waiting for his approval. Yet his expression remained familiar. He still believed he could find the right emotional weakness and turn it into control. The prosecutor asked me how Bright Harbor began. I described our first grant, the families we helped, and the trust I once placed in Marcus. Then she asked about the gala. What happened when you saw Ms. Cole wearing the necklace? I asked for it back. What did the defendant do? He grabbed my wrist and upper arm, dragged me across the ballroom, and ordered hotel security to throw me out. Why did you not resist? Because security had been instructed not to reveal the investigation unless necessary. Because cameras were recording. And because I had spent years reacting to his control in private. That night, I chose evidence over argument. What did you do at the door? I texted my father to stop the gala. Marcus's attorney rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Cross. You concealed your identity and wealth from your husband throughout your marriage. Correct? I used my mother's surname and maintained separate inherited assets disclosed in our prenuptial agreement. You did not tell him your father controlled Valecrest. Marcus learned that 2 years before the gala and concealed his knowledge from me. The attorney paused. That answer disrupted the deception narrative he had planned. You coordinated with your father to seize control of Bright Harbor. No. Bright Harbor is a non-profit. My father cannot own it. And neither can I. But Valecrest money kept the organization alive. My mother's trust-funded disclosed in-kind grants. Marcus used those grants to create duplicate expenses and divert donor money. You personally benefited when your husband was removed. I became responsible for repairing an organization, carrying millions in losses, public distrust, and harm to its clients. That was not a benefit. He held up a photograph of my father entering the ballroom. Would any ordinary woman have been able to lock 600 people in a hotel and summon a billionaire to defend her? The question was designed to make me ashamed of power I had not requested. An ordinary woman should not need a billionaire father to be protected from her husband. I said, the relevant question is why Marcus believed he had the right to drag any woman through a room and order strangers to remove her. The jury watched him. Not me. The trial lasted 7 weeks. Marcus was convicted on the major fraud, conspiracy, obstruction, and charitable theft counts. The jury also found that the Cedar House sale had been executed through fraudulent documents. Other allegations remained subject to separate proceedings and civil claims. At sentencing, Marcus finally spoke without a prepared gala behind him. He said he had sacrificed everything to build Bright Harbor. He said ambition had blurred boundaries. He said he regretted allowing personal relationships to interfere with governance. He did not mention the women displaced from Cedar House. He did not mention Janelle. He did not mention my mother's necklace. His regret still centered on the loss of his own future. The judge sentenced him to a substantial federal prison term and ordered restitution. She described the offenses as a betrayal amplified by the Foundation's mission. You did not steal from an abstract account. She told him, you stole choices from people who came to your organization because their choices had already been taken from them. Our divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Marcus received no interest in my family trust or Valecrest shares. His remaining marital share was largely consumed by judgments, legal costs, and restitution claims. I asked for no revenge provision and no public apology. I asked only for a clean legal separation and protection from future contact. On the day the decree arrived, I went to the family vault with my father. The necklace lay in its velvet box exactly as it had after leaving evidence custody. My father opened it but did not touch the diamonds. Are you ready? He asked. I think so. He fastened the necklace around my neck, the way he had once fastened it for my mother. The blue stone rested above my heart. In the mirror, I did not see Sabrina wearing it or Marcus stealing it. I saw my mother's photograph and remembered what my father had told me beauty could be armor. No, I said softly. My father looked concerned. What is wrong? Nothing. I just do not think armor is what I need anymore. I removed the necklace and returned it to the box. What will you do with it? Put it somewhere it can protect people without being worn. We sold the necklace through a private auction with full documentation of its history. The proceeds created the Isabel Vale Independence Fund, providing direct emergency grants controlled by survivors themselves. No executive could redirect the money. No donor could demand access to recipients. The first grants paid security deposits. Transportation. childcare, and legal fees for women leaving dangerous homes. My father struggled with the decision at first. The necklace had been one of his last physical connections to my mother. Then he read the first report showing that its sale had moved 37 families into safe housing. "Your mother would have liked the math," he said. "She would have liked the women choosing for themselves." A year after the night, Marcus dragged me across the Grand Meridian Ballroom. Cedar House reopened. We did not call the event a gala. There were no celebrity awards, no luxury gift bags, and no stage large enough to turn a director into the center of the mission. Residents, advocates, staff, and donors sat at equal-sized tables. The financial statements were displayed in plain language. Every major vendor contract was available through a public transparency portal. The executive compensation policy appeared beside the program budget. Survivors held half the seats on the governing council. I wore the same midnight blue gown, altered to remove the torn section near the shoulder where Marcus had gripped me. The seamstress suggested replacing the damaged fabric entirely. I asked her to preserve a narrow line of the repair. Some scars should not remain open, but neither should every scar be erased. My father attended quietly and sat beside Rosa Alvarez. He had returned to Vailcrest after the independent directors completed the safety reforms. But his role had changed. He delegated more. He listened longer. He no longer treated protection as a reason to withhold information. Daniel Reeves stood near the ballroom doors. This time, every exit remained open. Maya became Bright Harbor's chief financial and integrity officer. Camille led the Survivor Safety Commission permanently. Leah served on the Cedar House Council. Janelle chose not to attend. But a statement from her advocate reminded us that reform should never require survivors to publicly revisit their pain for an institution's benefit. When it was time to speak, I stood at floor level rather than on the stage. "A year ago," I said, "this room was designed to make one man look powerful. Tonight, it exists to make every dollar visible and every person heard. Bright Harbor cannot undo what happened under its name. We can compensate, disclose, rebuild, and surrender authority to the people our decisions affect. Trust is not restored by asking to be believed. It is restored by becoming verifiable." No orchestra swelled behind me. No spotlight followed me. The applause was smaller than the applause Marcus once received. But it meant more because it was not worship. After the event, I remained in the empty ballroom for a few minutes. The chandeliers reflected across the polished floor. I walked the path Marcus had forced me along. From the center tables to the doors, I remembered the pressure of his hand, Sabrina's smile, the phones raised around us. And the moment the music stopped, my father joined me near the entrance. "Do you regret sending the message?" he asked. "No. Do you regret not sending it sooner?" I thought about that. "I regret believing endurance was the same as patience," I said. But I needed enough truth to stop more than one gala. Daniel opened the doors. Beyond them, hotel staff laughed softly while clearing the corridor. No locks engaged. No security line waited. The building felt like a hotel again instead of a trap. Marcus had dragged me toward those doors as though I were an intruder in his world. He believed the ballroom belonged to his reputation. The hotel belonged to his influence. The charity belonged to his voice. And my mother's necklace belonged to whichever woman he chose to reward. He was wrong about all of it. The room had never belonged to the loudest person inside it. The hotel did not belong to the man who claimed credit for a favor. The foundation did not belong to the executive whose face appeared on its banners. And I did not belong to the husband who mistook love for permission. He dragged me out of the ballroom like I did not belong there. But the room, the hotel, and the truth had been mine all along. In the months that followed, people often asked which moment changed my life: seeing Sabrina in the necklace, feeling Marcus's hand on my arm, Watching my father enter, or hearing the jury's verdict. The honest answer was none of them by itself. My life changed through a series of smaller decisions, no camera captured. It changed when I copied the first suspicious invoice instead of accepting Marcus's explanation. It changed when Maya preserved records after being ordered to erase them. It changed when Leah sent an anonymous message even though she had every reason to distrust me. It changed when Janelle chose to speak on her own terms. It changed when my father disclosed a document that could damage him instead of using power to bury it. Truth did not arrive as one heroic entrance. It arrived through people deciding, one after another, that silence had become more dangerous than consequence. The Grand Meridian also changed its policies. No foundation, corporation, or private host could direct hotel security against a spouse, employee, or guest without an independent safety assessment. Event organizers could no longer treat staff as personal enforcers. Private suites connected to charitable functions required transparent billing and access logs. Daniel called the reforms the Elena Protocol. I asked him to rename them the Open Door Standards. I did not want another institution building a monument to a person when it should be building a system that worked without one. Bright Harbor became smaller after the scandal. Several donors never returned. Some programs transferred permanently to local organizations with deeper community trust. That was not failure. Growth had once been Marcus's favorite proof of virtue. I learned that an institution can become more honest by surrendering territory it should never have controlled. We stopped measuring success through gala revenue and press mentions. We measured nights of safe housing, court orders obtained, children placed in counseling, and clients who gained control of their own funds. I also stopped introducing myself through my marriage. For years, I had been Elena Cross in every public room because I believed a shared name represented loyalty. After the divorce, I became Elena Vale Bennett, legally my father's name beside my mother's dot, not because I needed the world to know which company my family owned, but because I no longer wanted any part of my identity defined by the man who had tried to remove me from it. On the second anniversary of Cedar House reopening, a young mother approached me in the courtyard. She held the hand of a little girl wearing a yellow coat. The woman said an Isabel Vale Grant had paid the deposit on their apartment and covered 6 weeks of childcare while she started a new job. I saw the video from the gala. She said, "Everyone online talked about your father stopping the music. But that was not the part that helped me." What was I asked? "You did not turn the charity into your revenge story. You gave the money back." After they walked away, I sat beneath an old cedar tree and allowed myself to cry. Not because Marcus had lost, and not because I had won. I cried because the necklace my mother once wore had become a key to an apartment she would never see. Something beautiful had stopped being a symbol of possession and become a source of freedom. That was the ending Marcus could never have understood. He thought power meant deciding who entered a room and who was thrown out. My father once thought power meant preventing every danger before it reached the people he loved. Sabrina thought power meant being chosen over another woman. I had once thought power meant enduring humiliation without letting it break me. We were all wrong in different ways. Real power was the ability to make the doors unnecessary, to build a life where no one else controlled whether you were permitted to stay. Speak. Work. Leave. Or begin again. And once I understood that, I never again confused a locked ballroom with safety, applause with respect, secrecy with peace, or possession with love. This story carries meaningful educational value about honesty and responsibility, and transparency in charitable work. Through Elena's journey, viewers understand that kindness cannot be measured only by emotional speeches, luxurious fundraising events, or impressive public images. Real value must be demonstrated by ensuring that donated money reaches the right people, vulnerable individuals are protected, and those in positions of power are held accountable for their decisions. The story also reminds us not to trust someone simply because of their reputation or public appearance, without independent oversight, careful verification, and transparent records. Even an organization built around a noble mission can be exploited for personal gain. Truth must therefore be supported by evidence, clear documentation, and the voices of those directly affected, not by rumors, appearances, or temporary emotions. Most importantly, the story shows that justice is not only about punishing those who did wrong. Justice also means restoring what was taken, repairing the systems that failed, and preventing similar harm from happening again. This message allows the script to move beyond a typical story of betrayal and become a meaningful lesson about ethics, power, trust, and social responsibility. Scriptwriter Nguyen Van Chien.